Live from Studio B, this is Proudly Made in Canada by Local Laundry. Brought to you by your hosts, Mr. Connor Kern and
Mr. Dustin Paisley.
And together, we are
Local Laundry.
We are the co-owners of Local Laundry. Welcome everybody to episode 2. Hopefully you listened to episode 1. If you didn't, there's an episode 1. This is episode 2. It's been an interesting journey so far. We are on Spotify. We got on the Google Podcast. Got rejected from the iTunes podcast. We have no idea what we're doing with how to put these up. But I think what it is that the feedback that I was getting was that it was a test thing, even though the first episode was 30 minutes long. So I think once we get this episode up, it won't look like as a test on iTunes.
Correct. But
that's just classic Apple being difficult with everything.
And that's just something we'll figure out.
Yeah. So hopefully you liked the first episode. Again, just as a reminder, Proudly Made in Canada by Local Laundry is all about local laundry, why we wanted to support Canadian made, why Canadian made is important, why it's a thing of pride for us, a point of difference, and all things made in Canada. So we want to have people on who are making things in Canada, producing things in Canada, and why it's a benefit. One thing, while I was driving over, another great podcast that I know we both listened to, Masters of Scale.
Good one.
And I was listening to an episode by the Dropbox,
Yes, Drew Houston.
What?
Drew Houston.
Drew Houston, yeah, owner and founder of Dropbox. And the whole podcast of Masters of Scale was like, even if you're the David, you can still beat the Goliath. Mm-hmm. But you can't just beat them at their own game because they'll crush you. You have to be different. You have to find something different, maybe a niche that the market's ignoring. And it got me thinking, I think that's exactly what we're doing with the Made in Canada, by making the switch to Made in Canada. Because when we first were opened up, and kind of in episode 1, we talked about how we got started and we said, any idiot can start a t-shirt company because, we're the two biggest idiots there are, and we figured it out. But when every idiot does, there's so many t-shirt companies out there. There's so many clothing companies. And one piece of advice I always give to people starting clothing companies, don't call your clothing companies blah, blah, blah apparel. But when we started, we were Local Laundry Apparel. I think on Facebook, we're still Local Laundry Apparel because Local Laundry is not available. But when every person who's started a clothing company, big or small, in the last 5 to 10, maybe 6 years, has been blah, blah, blah apparel. So if you're starting a clothing company, don't put apparel because it just cheapens it. It just shows the whole world that you just started and you're like us that don't know what you're doing. But anyways, it got me thinking about, David and Goliath. And when we went to Made in Canada, that's something that none of the big boys are doing. I don't want to name names, but you look at any big major clothing company that has a national or international distribution, none of them are Canadian made. Maybe some of them used to be, but it became too expensive and they want to cut costs, so they go overseas. So now when we made the switch to Canadian made, we're not competing against the big boys. We went from competing to hundreds of thousands of clothing companies. Now we're really only competing against a handful, right? Maybe 10. And these clothing companies, we differentiate from them enough and we actually get to know them and we want to support them, We would rather someone buy one of their sweaters, never buy one of ours. We'd rather someone buy one of our competitors' sweaters who are Canadian made rather than one of ours, because that means that they're supporting Canadian made. It means more clothing is getting out there that's Canadian made. I think it's great.
It is great. Not that I want to lose on sales, but you're absolutely right. I think the rising tide floats all boats, right? We want to be in support of Canadian made, Canadian manufacturing. And we want people to buy more Canadian products, more Canadian goods. We talked a little bit about that last episode, about the importance of buying Canadian, whether that's clothing, whether that's cars, whether that's energy products, everything, right? We think you should be buying more Canadian products.
Yeah, and it goes a long, long way. I mean, we're starting to see more and more news stories. I mean, another large designed in Canada clothing company that just came out in the news that their workers in India, I think, or somewhere,
it was Bangladesh,
are getting beaten their monthly wage is less than the cost of one of the garments, this clothing company's garments in stores, And I think we've seen it when we went and visited our manufacturers. Our hats come from the West Coast, our clothing and socks come from the East. And when you're actually able to see like the people that are actually making your stuff, that they're getting paid a livable wage, getting benefits, they're adhering, the factories are adhering to Canadian labor, strict Canadian labor and environmental laws. And these people are then going home, right? And they're buying stuff from other small businesses. They're paying Canadian taxes. They're supporting they're contributing to a diverse Canadian economy. And we just see more and more. One of the things that's been really interesting that's popped up, I know but I'm a big NBA fan, right? And this stuff is popping off with the NBA in China. And I was thinking again as well, like I was driving over here, that it's crazy. The NBA is fully prepared to lose like 15% of their business because of China.
That's crazy.
But all the shoes that the NBA players wear still going to be made in China. All the jerseys that they wear still going to be made in China. All that silly swag, bobblehead night. I went to a Sonics game one time. I got a sweet lunchbox. It's still all going to be made in China, which is just absolutely crazy. Now keep in mind, here at Studio B, it's not a professional studio yet. We're looking after 2 dogs, so Dustin just had to run to take a look and make sure the dogs are still alive. Yeah,
they're there.
They're alive and kicking.
Just saying hello.
That's Millie.
That's Millie. She's the loudest of the bunch.
So we apologize for this is we keep it in Studio B.
But I think, one of the things I think is worthwhile talking about is what are the effects of Made in Canada, both from a consumer perspective, but also from a business perspective. Because I think one of the challenges, obviously one of the biggest challenges for a lot of consumers within this whole Made in Canada shift is obviously the cost, right? So if we look at your boots, for example, so Connor has these beautiful boots that he wears. That are made right here in Calgary.
In Calgary. Shout out Alberta Boot Company.
They're a beautiful made in Canada product, handmade. They've been, second generation?
Third generation.
Third generation boot makers. And they make a very, 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 very high quality boot.
Yeah.
When I look at a pair of boots that I got as a birthday gift a couple of years ago, they're kind of falling apart. I've worn them for 2 seasons now, or 2 years. And Connor's boots, they're going to last...
I'd say at least 15 to 20 years.
15 to 20 years. So it's difficult, right? Because not enough of us think long term in most of our lives, but especially in buying products. We used to, but we don't anymore. Because we can go to a store and we can buy the same product, so it's a boot, right? I can wear a boot, and I can get it for at least a quarter of the cost. But it's going to last maybe a tenth of the time that your boot's going to last, right? Boot's already starting to wear away. It's not as quality made. You wear it in the snow and it'll get wet underneath the sole, and my socks will start to get wet. So there is a really big difference between the boots, and I know that in my future I'm going to be buying. I'd love to buy a pair of Alberta boots as the next boot purchase once these are kind of over and done with. But it's just kind of thinking back to that consumer mentality of thinking more long term, right? And thinking about the products that you're buying and what you're supporting. Because if I look at those pair of boots that I have, chances are that similar to this Bangladesh story, right? They're probably made in a small little factory or maybe a large factory where people probably aren't treated incredibly. They're probably not paid a very good wage. And you just have this large, multinational conglomerate that's raking in the profits that are going to a very select few of either owners or executives or investors in the company. So it's a bit of a different ecosystem.
Yeah.
So when we think about the Made in Canada piece, and it is really important to think about where those dollars are going, right? And the companies that you're supporting and the products that you're buying, because these Canadian-made products are going to last you much longer than most of these cheaply made, non-made in Canada products.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think we don't want to fall into the trap of it's just look how great we are, we know everything, and you're
Spoiler
a bad
alert,
person.
We don't. We don't know very much yet.
That you're all a bad person because you buy everything made in China. Look, we're all to blame. I mean, no one loves like a deal more than Dustin and I. Dustin and I are two of the most frugal people you'll ever meet, and no one understands the high of a deal better than you and I.
My wife does, but
a little bit more. But we understand it's a cost. But one of the things that I've been looking into lately is if you were to take those boots and compare to my boots and average out the cost each time you wear them, right? And what it's costing you each time you wear them. You take the total amount of times you've ever worn them over their lifetime, divide it, and that's, you take the total cost, the retail, what you pay for them, and divide it by how many times you've worn them, and you get a cost per use. The boots that I got that are going to last me 10, 15 years are going to cost me a fraction of the cost of each time I wear them compared to those. And someone told me the other day, it's hard because none of us have any money. We're all trying to figure out how to, make that dollar stretch. But someone just the other day told me, like, poor people or people that don't have a lot of money are the people that can't afford cheap clothes. Like, they can't afford to buy cheap clothes, because if they buy cheap clothes, they're going to have to keep buying and buying and buying. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't own a washing machine, every time you got to do laundry, you got to go down a laundromat and pay, $3, $4, $5. Over time, you do that 4 or 5 years, it would have been just cheaper buying a washing machine, paying that upfront cost of $400 or $500. Right. You know what I mean? And it's the same with clothing. And that was the one thing with our clothing that went through the roof when we made the switch to Canadian made. We used to get all sorts of complaints when our stuff was made overseas, and people would say, it's falling apart, it's disintegrating.
Stitch came out.
Yeah. And now the quality's gone through the roof. We haven't received one complaint on the quality. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the same material. It's still a 50-50 cotton polyester blend.
So when you think about the business decision too, right, we're seeing, and we're a small company, but if you look at a large corporation, you're seeing a massive reduction in your returns. You're seeing a massive reduction in your need for more quality control. Mm-hmm. You're essentially moving a step out of the process to make sure that you're really taking a look at all your garments before they ship out. And that being said, of course, you're going to inspect, but there's that confidence in knowing your good is going out the door without any concerns. But there's also the admin piece, right, where we're not having to answer as many customer emails. We're not getting these requests. And not only are we not getting these requests, but the cost to replace them, right, because we are selling online, we're not necessarily in store, that becomes a really big challenge too, because there's also the decision to be made, right? Do you make your customer pay for shipping to get the new piece when the piece that you sent them originally was kind of crap? So now you have to think about, well, now you're paying for additional shipping costs, plus you're shipping out a new sweater. So that right there, I mean, there's no margin left on that product at all. You're losing money every single piece you send out. And when your quality control, maybe obviously less than 10%, but let's say even 5, 6, 7% of your goods are having an issue and being returned, that's a pretty significant number, right? Whereas now we look at our goods, and you're right, we've seen, I can't think of very many cases of a customer ever coming back saying there was an issue with their garments and switching to Canadian made.
And if there is, we got our manufacturer's number on phone, right? And we can pop on over, like, give them a call and be like, this was an issue, and they want to know these issues, they'll fix it. Whereas when you're dealing with companies overseas, they're not going to take the time to deal with you.
They'll budget for, however, whatever percentage of quality control.
I remember my brother-in-law, he wanted to test out e-commerce and build a website, so he started a backpack company, right? Just small. It's called Bag Square. And he was just trying stuff out, and he sold these backpacks made in China. And I bought one, and I wanted to support him, and within like a couple of weeks the strap broke, right? So you couldn't wear it as backpack. So I was like, what do I do? And he went back to his manufacturer. The manufacturer was just like, take it to a seamstress, like take it to a sewer. They'll fix it. It's not our problem.
Yeah,
he bought it. But I wanted to ask you, do you think more and more people are willing to support Canadian made? And if you do, do you think more and more people are wanting to support Canadian made?
Good question. I think more and more people are coming around to the idea. I think there's always been that subsection of Canadian consumers who are very adamant about supporting local, buying Canadian-made goods. But I think as of recently, it's started to become a little bit more popular, right? There's more people with influence who are starting to talk more about it, right? And encourage more people to get involved. Arlene Dickinson is one. One of my favorite things she does. She's got a lot of influence, having been on Dragon's Den, has a consumer packaged goods food accelerator program here in Calgary. But she always, every Christmas on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, she'll always promote and encourage people to engage in the discussion of, hey, list your favorite local Canadian companies. And maybe some of my followers will see these and check them out and encourage more people to buy local. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that happen. I also think the whole Made in America trend has been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that move into Canada, right? We're kind of always following trends of the US, but I think we're starting to see that more of that in Canada. And I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more of that post-election. We're recording this on Election Day in Canada. We may or may not have a new prime minister tonight. So, I'm kind of hoping that after this election happens, there's a lot of division. I'm kind of hoping that as Canadians, we sort of band together a little bit more and try and support one another and support Canadian companies. So I don't think we're quite as far along the trend as we'd like to be. But that being said, I think there is a lot of pressure on retail companies to be supporting this whole local movement. And we've been fortunate to be in that position, right? Most of the companies, or all the companies that most of the companies that we're working with have reached out to us, right? Because we're a local company, because we make our products here in Canada. We donate back to the communities. We build community in everything we do. So they're looking to support more of those social mission, if you will, / good companies. Right. And I think we fall in that bucket. And I think the fact that we're made in Canada really is the cherry on top on that piece, right?
Yeah, because I don't want to get people confused that there are a lot. I think people should be supporting local businesses, and we hope that you do. But I think you kind of have to hold those local businesses accountable.
Absolutely.
Just because you're local doesn't mean you're made locally here.
True.
You know?
I do want to preface, because there are a lot of great local companies that aren't necessarily made here.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there is always going to be the case where sometimes it does make sense to not have your products made here. Not all the time. Right. But I think there are circumstances. So when I look at, as an example, so here in Calgary, again, there's a great new local sock manufacturer. So they are now manufacturing their socks here in Canada. But before that got up and running, there's another great local company here in Calgary that would make their socks in Italy. And of course, Italy's been well known for their high quality of garment manufacturing. And again, when you go back to this usage topic of how much you paying per use of the garment, when I look at the socks I'm buying from anywhere else, right, nice dress socks or just wearing socks, versus some of the socks I'm wearing from this company that makes theirs in Italy, that cost per use goes way down, because they make phenomenal socks that are super comfy, that are high quality, but they are made in Italy. Mm-hmm. But again, in that case, I'm happy to support that company, because they are a Calgary company, they are local, even though they manufacture outside of Canada. So I think it is thinking about, support a local company, right? I'm not supporting a company that makes their socks somewhere overseas, and this company is based out of Atlanta, somewhere in the States, or wherever, right? And they're just this huge multinational corporation. I'm still wanting to support a local company. And yes, they don't manufacture here in Canada, but still having that conscious effort of thinking about who you're buying from, right? And knowing who that person is, knowing that business, we know how much work they put into establishing a relationship with their manufacturers, and going over to the factories and visiting them and doing some of that quality control himself. We know that it's a quality product and that it is in support of a good industry, right? He's not exploiting labor or taking advantage of anyone. But again, it's important to think about, who are you supporting? Right.
So if you were starting a business tomorrow from scratch, product-based company, would you make an effort to be making all your stuff in Canada? As a small business, just getting started, you have no money.
Absolutely. I think the goal is to try. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I talk to some as well, who really want to make their stuff here, but they struggle.
Right.
And I think that's a big challenge too, because you look at a lot of the industries that are around, and unfortunately there's not a lot of heavy manufacturing for some particular
products,
industries.
Yeah.
right? As an example, there's a local swimsuit company.
Right.
You know, it was challenging for them to find Canadian production, or you know, a backpack company.
Yeah.
It's challenging to find a manufacturer with the expertise and experience to be able to manufacture backpacks here in Canada. Not to mention the cost of that backpack. And I think that's one of the things to think about too. Is if you're made in Canada, you definitely are a premium product, right? To be able to support, to support the high cost of labor, the high cost of protecting the environment, all the other pieces that fall in line with a Canadian environmental. And I think it's challenging for a lot of brand new brands to get started because not everyone can be that luxury brand and can be that luxury company.
Or I find a lot of people are almost shy to be that luxury company, and they're scared to put themselves as premium. Mm-hmm. But I think as soon as you're Canadian made, you're absolutely right. You are a premium product.
There is a premium to it.
Yeah, like you look at Canada Goose, you know, they're a great company that you know, just that's all still making all their clothes and jackets. Most, yeah. Sorry, some actually come from Italy.
Outerwear.
Yeah, their jackets, but their jackets are made in Canada. But yeah, they're premium of the premium.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what we're trying to align Local Laundry a little bit more as you know, that premium brand. And I think a lot of people are scared. You know, when they're first starting out, they don't want to charge those prices. Not everyone, but
for the most part, it's not unfair, right? We started in the middle of the pack because we didn't feel like we could reach that demographic that was spending $120 on a sweater.
Yeah.
Right. That is definitely a smaller section of the market, but it comes down to what your company values are, right, and what you want to build. And there's nothing wrong with starting a company where your products are manufactured in China, but I think when you are doing that, you really have to be conscious of what type of brand you're building.
Right.
And you have to be conscious of what those values are. Because I don't think you can be this hyper, you know, eco-conscious company that's concerned about the environment and perhaps you plant 10 trees for every one you sell or whatever it is that your mission is, yet all of your garments are manufactured overseas, not supporting any sort of local economies. So it does kind of depend, you know, what the type of brand you're going to build. And I think your manufacturing and everything in your supply chain has to be in line with that vision.
Yeah, because I think for us, we didn't want it to become a race to the bottom in terms of price, just because all these other companies, they can compete on price, and we certainly cannot. And we didn't want to become one of those clothing companies, you know, that ends up in a, you know, a department store that sells brands that were cool from 2-3 years ago because it was just a race to the bottom in price. So now when big companies come to us and they want to sell our gear and they're asking for discounts on our stuff, we just gotta tell them, like, we can't. I mean, our stuff is to discount to discount Canadian manufacturing as a whole. There's a reason this stuff costs this much, you know. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting journey. I think it's definitely the best decision we made, and I think going and being Canadian made is almost like a layer of protection around us. You know, because people can try and rip off our designs, and many people have, but it's not going to be that same thing. It's not going to say made in Canada. You know, and I think Canada has on an international stage has a great reputation and is a great brand in itself. Mm-hmm. So like we're really excited. You know, we haven't done too much into it, but we're excited to expand. You know, outside of Canada, and to bring that Canadian made to other places around the world. You know. But let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about our event last week, and
let's talk about it,
and what it's all about and how it went, and you know that really cool part of it. You know, people wanting to support Canadian made, but also just wanting to build community. So maybe you could say a few words on what did we have last week.
Sure. So for anyone who's familiar with the company, Local Laundry, one of our pillars is to collaborate with others and to share stories from the community, right? And at the core of what we do, it's building community, but we have our 5 pillars. So
why don't you list off our 5 pillars, just as a refresher?
Sure. So our 5 pillars are to allow you to proudly represent where you're from. We started in Calgary, but now we moved into Canada, so it kind of gives you that sense of pride and belonging. We share stories from the communities. We collaborate with others within the community, other small businesses, organizations, charities, nonprofits. we donate back to local charities. So what started as 10% of our profits, we still commit to 10% of our profits go back to local charities. Last year we donated far more than 10%. And then we also support everything to do with Canadian manufacturing. So everything is manufactured here in Canada. Our towels, our toques, our socks, our pillows, our crew necks, our sweaters, our stickers, everything, our hang tags, everything is manufactured here in Canada. So that's the 5 pillars. But going back to our event, we had a great event last week called Startup and Beers. Not really an inspiring name. It really just grew out of a lot of people when we first started wanting to connect over beer, right? A lot of new entrepreneurs, small businesses, just kind of wanted to get together or just chat, understand what everyone was working on, see if there was ways that we could help one another. And it really just started as, I think you mostly, but both of us, going for beers with a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
And finally saying, you know what, let's just get together, right? Let's not have 25 beers amongst the 5 of us all going for beers. Let's just everyone get in a room and let's talk and chat.
Because it came about like, oh, I just had beers with this guy. You should meet this person.
Yeah.
Oh, I just had beers with this girl. Like, you would love her.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, why don't we all just go have beers?
So we did that. Or I should say Connor organized that originally, and then it started
with like 10 people in my parents' bar, and most of them were strangers. Mm-hmm. And then it's just like slowly over time, more and more people. And a couple of events ago, we implemented, we don't make a penny off this event, but a couple of events ago, we implemented, a ticket charge. And you come in, pay a ticket charge, through Eventbrite. You can donate $10, or some people donate $50. Multiple people donate $50, which is incredible. And you nominate a charity when you buy a ticket, and then night of, we randomly pick 3 or 4 charities, and we all nominate. We all vote on which one we want all the money to go towards. And so, just last week, we raised over $900 for kids' cancer care. Which is absolutely incredible.
It's super cool, and the best part is you get a bunch of local small business owners who get to come together and meet one another, mix and mingle, and really just be able to chat about problems, right? This isn't your average networking event. This isn't card pushing.
Yeah.
There's a couple realtors, accountants, and others in the room who are always out there networking. But the rule to this event is I don't care what business you're in. You're not here to do sales.
Yeah.
This is all about connecting and helping you grow your business.
Not a business development gig.
No business development, no card pushing. Everyone at the beginning has 5 seconds to introduce themselves. No matter how many people in the room, we always do this. You have 5 to 10 seconds to introduce who you are, what your business is, and a problem that you're facing. And then it's Connor's and I job for the rest of the night to just go around playing matchmaker, right? We could say, oh, you just started a beverage company. You need to talk to this brewery, right? Because they've gone through all the hops that you need to go through. Have a chat with them, learn from them a little bit. And just the whole night, right? You and I are playing matchmaker, making sure that all these different entrepreneurs are talking to the right people they need to be talking about. And the feedback has been really, really, really positive.
Yeah.
People are super happy. They want to be a part of the event. They leave making great connections, and potentially organizing coffee to chat with someone more in the future. But really is kind of coming back to that philosophy of ours of always wanting to build community, and this is just one extension of it.
Yeah, and we always like to highlight other Canadian-made companies. We were hosted by a different company each time. Yeah. Last time we were at this past week, we're at Calgary Heritage Roasting Co., which is a new coffee shop in Ramsey, and they've been longtime supporters of Local Laundry and Startup and Beers.
Shout out to Mike and Jamie.
Shout out Mike and Jamie. And they got to serve coffee, and everyone got to come in and check out the new place. And then we had Ritual Donuts come in, serving up some of the most delicious donuts. And again, it's we get to showcase some of the great things that they're doing. Some of their stuff that they're all making in Canada. So I think it's if you are an entrepreneur out there and you're looking to meet other people, I think you have to be meeting as many people as you can. I mean, when I first started, none of my friends were into entrepreneurship. They all kind of made fun of me. And so I just started finding random people off the internet. Like, hey, you're building something. You seem kind of cool and normal and not weird. Let's go for coffee. Let's bounce ideas off each other. How can we help each other? And I think once you kind of put it out there that you're not looking to sell, you're not looking to be sold, you just, how can we help each other? And it's as simple as maybe a cold introduction. I know this person.
Yeah.
Or in my experience, I've done this. You should give this a whirl.
Yeah.
So, But yeah, those are some of the just little things that we're building community. But I think on that note, maybe we'll kind of end the show. And
if anyone is an entrepreneur, a small business in Calgary, and you'd like to join our next one, let us know. Again, there's a ticket component. It's donate by choice, so however much you want to give, and then night of we select or we vote for the top charity, and that charity gets all of the funds for the
all the money. We don't take a penny.
No. And the cool part about that, I will say, is sometimes as a small business owner or an entrepreneur, oftentimes you're isolated, right? You're not always surrounded by people who are supportive. So A, it's great to get out and be with like-minded people and other entrepreneurs who understand the journey. But B, it's a really powerful message to kind of show that as entrepreneurs, it's hard to understand that as an individual you can make an impact, but when we come together as a community, it becomes abundantly clear that in numbers, there is a positive impact, there is an effect. And so $900 was donated to Kids Cancer Care on a small little event that we organized, but I think that shows that when the community comes together, absolutely we can make an impact.
Definitely, 100%. And on that note, so concludes episode 2 of Proudly Made Canada by Local Laundry. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, hopefully you stuck around, and hopefully you'll come back for another little tasty treat of episode 3 coming at you. And maybe by that time we'll be on iTunes. We'll keep you updated. We'll keep you posted.
We'll see you then.
See you then. From Studio B, signing off. This is Connor.
Dustin.
And together, we are Local Laundry.
Local Laundry.